Alright, so here we have the Samsung SUR40, formerly called Surface, now called nothing in particular. Here's a sample application put together last hour or so. Here is the performance profiling tools for Windows, WPF, and here's the frame rate counter, which is what we're going to pay attention to. Here we see that we just have a couple labels on top of a big background image. If we manipulate them, we get some frame rate. We don't have any frame rate when we're not manipulating anything because it doesn't refresh the screen anymore. So that's at 74, peaked probably about 80 or so. Yeah, like I said, these are just labels for the most part on top of here. I just got 3. Bring them around, resize them. Not a lot of lag. Rotating. Here's our graph, 100 there at the top. So we're running, 60 to 100 frames per second. Totally fine. Alright, so each time I push this button, I'm going to add 100 new labels to the screen. Got a counter up here, how many labels I've got right now. And I can just maneuver these around. Now there's a basic lag just on finger on everything. Doesn't matter if you got 1 or 100 or 1,000. Just the mouse. You can even see the little mouse dot on my finger. If I just jerk it, it trails behind by about 1 inch. So that's the trail behind, but there's no stutter actually on the label itself. If I go and resize it and it's semi-transparent, move it around all I want to. Scaling the frame rate goes down a little bit compared to the move, but it's all good. Still sitting there at the 63 frames per second or so. Constantly. Doesn't really have a dip down. Move this around as I'm going. Actually, the frame rate goes up the more that I'm moving. Alright, so let's add some more labels. Alright, now we're up to 500 labels. Labels everywhere. And pretty smoothly move around. No problem, I can even send them shooting off. All happy, and as I'm doing that, sit here at 50, 59, 60 frames per second pretty constantly. And again, the more you move around, naturally the higher the frame rate goes, because it's got something worth refreshing. But again, take any one of them, move it around, and it's not moving with any stutter at all. It's lagging my finger, but it's not stuttering itself. Make it big, rotate around, move it around big. I'm going to keep it moving when I look at the frame rate counter again. So it's at 42 right now as I'm moving that great big label around, refreshing more and more of the screen. Alright, so let's go to pings. Alright, so now I have pings. 10 of them. They're nice and alpha transparent on top of each other. And I've got a little semi-transparent box around him. Can rotate him, bang, bang. He's got a pretty smooth line on him. Move it around, rotate around. I'll keep it moving while I'm looking at my frame rate counter. 70, 80, no problem. Alright, let's put some more. 30. Still happy. Looking pretty good. 76. Again, these are ping images, all the same ping image over and over, with a WPF backgroundy block around it. I haven't gotten rid of yet. Just default on the Surface to make everything square. Or in the Surface SDK. Move it around. Everybody's happy. Making big already and stuff. Yep, still getting, let's see that focus, 75, plenty. Alright, so let's go for a much bigger number. Boop, boop. 100 seems good. Take this one, move around. Not really seeing any performance change at all. Again, moving them around. Still right there, that 60 to 70 frames per second. Resizing. I'm gonna keep doing this. Yeah, all perfectly happy. The only time that frame rate counters drop so far is when I stop interacting with it and it stops refreshing. So it's not counting a frame rate anymore. Even a small one right on top of that big one, back and forth, back and forth. There you go. Okay. Vector images, they're directly in WPF. I've got a mix of 2 that I'm adding with every button push, just 10 at a time. Not looking too bad as far as the refresh if I'm moving around. Showing about 50 frames per second, 50 to 60. So I'm moving this around, moving this one. About 63 frames per second. Scaling it up and down. Dropping to 30 frames a second or so doing this. And it really depends on what I'm scaling on top of. If I scale it on top of nothing, no problem at 45 frames a second. If I bring it on top of a couple other vectors, and scale it on top of that, it drops to 24 frames per second. So just the same operation depending on what's behind it. Having a big difference. Whether it's just the one big ping behind it, or whether it's another vector image behind it. Yeah, so here you'll see the graph has been a lot smaller while I've been doing that. So, now I have to adjust 40. Moving it doesn't seem too bad. Maybe a little bit more lag behind my finger. Still reasonably smooth. But I'm moving it. Oh, it's actually down to like 20 to 30, 25 as I'm moving around, depending on what I'm moving on top of. This is all still being done with the hardware pipeline too. It would highlight if anything was done with software. Scale in, rotate it. Oh, that rotate's kind of chunky. Yeah, we're down to like 8 frames per second at that point for. Okay, so let's some more of these vectors. 100, 120, 140. Well, this is still 20 to 35 frames per second. Moving this one though, which is a more complex object. It's also doing a rotate at the same time. That's probably not fair. Try this. There we go. Yeah, 10 frames per second on that. Going down to 10 to 13 frames per second. So not the most abysmal performance we've ever seen, but these are still not super complex objects. And certainly the performance on vector is not nearly as good as the performance going all raster, even with a alpha channel on the raster. That rotate was, yeah, got us down to 1 frame per second on that scale and rotate. Thinking about it. Yeah. So anything of any scale, it's really gonna start messing with it. Whereas we really didn't test the pings till breaking. So certainly somewhere around 100 vectors of that complexity already messed it up. Whereas 220, look at that. No problem all the way back up to 60 frames per second. Once it puts those rasters on there and figures out how to buffer them, they're all good no matter what.